believing that it was starting at a certain time, and we missed half of it.
Yes, we did.
Sneaky.
We were hungry.
All right, Scott Clark, thanks, brother. Just tweeted out that he is on his way to hashtag Make America Great Again and vote for @Real Donald Trump in Jeff City. He is an elector.
Great.
Scott Clark, brother, if you feel like calling into the show, please do. I'll get you at 8:20, somewhere around that category. But thanks. I mean, this electoral college thing, listen, this is much ado about nothing. Nothing's going to change, although they're trying to. And, in fact, so much so, they're trying to. There's one guy in Texas, this Chris Suprun guy, okay? Writes an op-ed in the New York Times. New York Times, which is supposedly this paper of record and just is amazing and high-quality journalism, a real institution, never bothers to check anything about this guy. Because he's talking about how great he is and how he's, somebody and he's an important guy and he's a credible guy. But New York Times never bothers to check anything. But there are certain brave news organizations that have. GotNews.com, some of the other websites. And then how about this Dallas TV station, Jason Whiteley, WFAA in beautiful Dallas. Here's my buddy. I used to work with Jason at Channel 4. Great reporter. And that hasn't changed. Check it out.
Welcome to the mound. First responder, Christopher Suprun.
He portrays himself as a hero.
He's a firefighter paramedic who was first among the scene when the third plane struck the Pentagon during the terrorist attacks September 11th, 2001.
A Dallas resident for more than a decade.
He is a founding member of the Never Forget Foundation. He travels.
Chris Suprun is a licensed paramedic and has a nonprofit called the Never Forget Foundation. Making news now, though, for what he wrote in the New York Times this month. How he, as a member of the Electoral College, will not support Donald Trump. Suprun even uses his resume to establish his credibility, writing that, quote, 15 years ago, as a firefighter, I was part of the response to the September 11th attacks against our nation.
He claimed to be a first responder with the Manassas Park Fire Department on September 11th, 2001. And he personally told us stories. Well, I was fighting fire that day at the Pentagon. No, I was on a medic unit at the Pentagon.
He told you all that?
Yes. And you make a phone call to Manassas Park and find out he wasn't even employed there till October of 2001.
A month later?
Correct.
That's what Manassas Park told us as well. Said it hired him on October 10th of 2001, a month after 9/11. And the chief even says his department never responded to the Pentagon.
Hey, now, ladies and gentlemen, the reporter himself, Jason Whiteley, who I had the real privilege of working with at Channel 4 back in the old days. Brother, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Back in the 90s.
I know. Can you imagine? That was a long time ago, and you and I were simpatico, man. We had a good time together, and you were one of the most gifted young writers in journalism at that time, and of course that hasn't changed. The story is awesome. I didn't play the whole thing because it's 3 minutes long, but I wanted to make sure I could talk to you. But boy, I know with not only with this whole thing with the fact that he lied about being a first responder to 9/11, but you also explored what uniform is he wearing when he's throwing out the ball?
Man, that's $1 million question. You know, we had a few paramedics. The person we interviewed asked not to be identified. That's why his voice sounded kind of weird. We just heard it there a moment ago. We had to disguise his voice a tad because that person is still a working paramedic. But that person and another paramedic both looked at the uniform, especially in a picture when Suprun was standing next to an FDNY 9/11 first responder. And if you compare the uniforms, not necessarily the colors, but just compare the little nuggets on the uniforms. Chris Suprun doesn't have a nameplate on his uniform. Chris Suprun doesn't have any of those circles that go around his sleeves, those bands around his sleeves, which would show the years of service. Things that I didn't necessarily notice, but things that active paramedics notice, these dress uniforms. More than that, the question is, whose uniform is it? He says he's a flight paramedic now on his resume and a lead paramedic concurrently here. But you call both of these places. One of them says, no, he's not employed by us. The state of Texas says this other place he says that he's a paramedic of, Freedom EMS. It doesn't exist in the state of Texas. So right now, it doesn't appear that he's a current paramedic Whose uniform is he wearing? No one really knows. We think it might be Manassas Park, Virginia's uniform, a company he said he worked for 14 years ago. The people there said, yeah, it kind of looks like his. But our paramedic again said, think about this, Jason, and Jamie, you too. How many items of clothing do you have from 15 years ago that still fit you perfectly today?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Makes you think.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the reality here is what's amazing, too, is, first of all, you guys, well, he's from Texas, so obviously the story is relevant. But there's been so little curiosity on the part of the media into this guy. And even as of last night, Suprun is still on Twitter trolling Donald Trump. And nobody's even bothering to check out this guy. That's not to mention all the other kind of personal stuff that you also uncovered as well regarding the bankruptcy and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we first did the story on Thursday. We started working on it on Wednesday. And I'll give you a 10-cent version of how it started. So after the election, Donald Trump wins. Politico somehow finds out that this guy named Chris Suprun in Dallas, Texas, a member, an elector, is not going to vote for Donald Trump. So Politico does a story. I realize the guy's from Dallas. I reach out to him. The guy emails me back. Chris emails me back and says, no, the story was incorrect. I am going to vote for Donald Trump today when the Electoral College meets. That was incorrect. I said, oh, okay, well, thanks, good deal. I didn't pursue it because the guy was going to vote for Donald Trump. Story kind of died. Fast forward 10 days to December 5th, he writes this in the New York Times, and that blows this thing back up again. The second line he writes in the New York Times is, 15 years ago, I was a first responder. He immediately uses his resume to establish his credibility. Had he not bragged about that, it probably wouldn't have been a news story. Who would have looked into it?
Right. But, it's funny how the New York Times didn't even bother at that point. Now, curiously, when you asked for a response, though, and I realized they called it jammed packed. But anyway, right. Yeah, I know. But the fact is, he has like a PR firm, right?
He has two PR firms. One's Fenton Communications, the other's Megaphone Strategies. And I've only glanced at, and people have told me that Van Jones from CNN, one of the commentators, is involved in Megaphone Strategies. I'm not sure who's behind, Fenton Communications.
Yeah, it's amazing, though, to watch this guy. Anybody else would have been just humiliated and been widely exposed, and yet it seems like people are just like nothing to see here. So I'm glad you guys did it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It has blown up in certain circles. And this morning there's another one of your colleagues somewhere across the country who's apparently digging into it a little more. But, here we are, 6 days after we originally reported the story, 5 days, and I've yet to hear from the guy.
Right.
He's talking everywhere but me. His schedule's supposedly jammed packed.
I know.
Where is he? I'd love to hear from him.
Hey, listen, great talking to you. Congratulations on your success. And, of course, WFAA, a powerhouse television station down there in Dallas.
Take care, my friend. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Good talking to you. At Jason Whiteley is where you can find him on Twitter as well. And, he's got to be a little careful because he's a reporter. He's not a political guy. So he had to be kind of straight up there. I couldn't drag him into a discussion about Donald Trump or Super. But isn't it amazing how nobody is paying any attention to this? And this is, you talk about fake news and you talk about corruption in journalism. Obama in his last news conference was whining about how all of our major institutions are under attack, including journalism, of course. But no wonder, because these guys are not credible. The New York Times put this guy up there without checking anything about him, and they leave it to, alternative sources of media and brave local reporters like Jason, who's working for a mainstream media outlet, and then other sources like Got News and these other sources. But you're not going to see that story on CBS or NBC. I mean, maybe you have. I haven't seen it. It's not prominently displayed. The guy still is considered to be a credible elector and one who is leading the charge as Donald Trump's presidency is in the balance, which is baloney. He's going to be president of the United States. That's